Now broadcasting from the Next Gen Conservative Studio in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report with Sam Whitfield.
Well, that was interesting. The intro kind of froze up there for a sec. But at any rate, folks, welcome to the Whitfield Report and welcome to our guest. The show has come down with a case of toxic man flu, ladies and gentlemen. So,
how you doing,
greetings
Sam? Good
to
be
everyone.
Here.
And hope your Saturday night is going well. And yeah, I'm honored to have Toxic Man Flu on, who honestly, I don't know that much about Toxic Man Flu's background, other than that for the uninitiated, he is one of the co-hosts of Comics Division and that channel on YouTube, and he's friends with Gary from Neurotic and the Critical Drinker and that whole lot of nerdy kind of pop culture
when they
slash
claim
occasional cultural warriors. So anyway, sir, welcome to the program. How are you doing tonight?
Doing okay. I'm recovering from the whole family had this crud unknown virus, they called it, for a couple of weeks. So my voice is a little bit deeper than normal. But feeling good. We got a lot of stuff done today. Looking forward to doing a lot of things tomorrow. Getting the house up and in order. And Mrs. Flu went out and did a lot of good work with the garden yesterday and today. And like I say, every day that I spend above ground is a good day. So happy to be here.
Yeah, that's kind of my motto too. It's interesting. As crazy as the current state of the world is, with everything going on, I do try to be, somewhat optimistic as far as, well, the world might be going to shit, but, as long as we have our families and our friends and, in our case, a good community online as well, then there can't be too much to really complain about. That's kind of how I see things, but
yeah, it's a good attitude to have. I find myself doing my best to try and keep that attitude. Doesn't always happen. These last 2.5 years, all this stuff's been, it's taken a toll on me. I know mentally, but I mean, we'll get into the whole, the stuff that with comics and getting into that and Friday Night Tight stuff and all those here a little later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that this whole kind of era of the pandemic, my co-host, Apex Gam, and I join, who will be joining us later, he and I talk out, that a lot, how, there's a lot of, shit that's going on, but then there's also a lot of shit that, the shit that is already out there gets magnified a lot because of the internet and because of, the media and whatnot. And the whole thing with like the pandemic and whatnot, like it got exacerbated a lot because there was the whole vaccinated versus unvaccinated things, and something that could have been a unifying moment for humanity, once again became the morally superior, we're vaccinated versus the loyal unvaxxed dregs, and whatnot. So
yeah, and it's it's not, with that stuff, it shouldn't have been about whether or not the information that was coming out, all of that. We didn't need disinformation on both sides. We need to know what the truth was so that we can make an informed decision. It was the forcing others to do something that was experimental which is what the
Yeah.
Nazis did, of course, and stuff that Gina had brought up, Gina Carano, and got her fired from all that.
Yep.
Whenever we force stuff on others against their will, I don't think it ever turns out well from that standpoint.
No.
Yeah.
It never does, and she was absolutely right about all of that.
Yeah.
And to that, to the end, someone on Twitter who follows me, who's in my DMs, and I often asked me if I had seen the Kenobi series yet, and as I've mentioned on the show before, I really haven't supported anything that Disney has done since they fired Gina. And it wasn't just because of Gina, but it was that plus the fact that Disney Plus was costing me $69 a year, that
hmm
and I wasn't using it that much anyway, but there was that whole thing. And
Right.
I hear that from what I've heard, Kenobi is awful.
Well, the missus
So
has been watching it, and it's been up and down. So she's doesn't see the same things as I do and stuff. And I guess that's the great part about us as individuals. We don't see the same things, but we do agree on many shows. I have chosen not to watch it, and more from a standpoint of I'd rather do something else with my time. Um, I've recently started producing for Comics Division, and it has taken up a lot of time. He's wanting to move some of the shows to focusing on creators. We had Andy Masterson on Thursday night, who does the figures, and did some of the Friday Night Tights figures, and he had sent comics one that was him as the avatar from his show, and we've got the Ginger Ninja coming on, and we've had Spencer Picculi on that writes for Bounding into Comics. This talks about his art and the thing that he does from there. We're going to have Makini Draws on. We're going to get Vinny Art on. We've had Latino Slan on. We've had, of course, John Trent from Bounding into Comics. And I'm out looking for artists and people who are doing independent things. And we want to highlight that. And it's
cool.
Yeah. So I think it takes a lot of work, and some of the stuff that's coming out of Disney, it doesn't excite me anymore. Star Wars stuff doesn't excite me anymore. The Star Trek was really my thing, and I can't stand what's happened with that from there. And
I'm
I've moved
sure.
on.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, to kind of segue, I guess, you brought up that you were, producing some things for Comic Division. But, just kind of in general, I guess, how'd you get into this whole crazy YouTube, rabbit hole / content creation? If I may ask.
So I watch a lot of. I've been watching YouTube videos for a while, mostly how-to videos. I had to repair some cars and some stuff like that, and I caught a video from Midnight's Edge 3 years ago or so in the middle of the Star Trek films. If we were going to get a fourth one or not, rumors about the third one, all that kind of stuff. And as I was watching the Midnight's Edge videos, Comics Division had done some videos on Star Trek, and they came up in the feed. So I started watching the Comics Division videos a while back. I can't remember exactly how far back that went, but I liked the avatar that he was doing, and the voice he was doing, the comedy that he was putting into it.
Yeah.
I like the laugh, and I like comedies more than most other films. Most of my top five
Same.
films are comedies from there, and from that led to watching a World Class Bullshitters came up a few times, and then Midnight's Edge After Dark started coming up, and then other people from there. And we were watching Game of Thrones, as just about everybody was at the time.
Sure.
And we were looking for people that were dishing about Game of Thrones and the lore and the books. And Gary Nerdrotic came up. So we started watching Gary. Maybe about 25,000, 30,000 that he had at the time. And then his stuff just took off because, Doctor Who and Game of Thrones kind of crapped the bed at the same time. So, and I
Yeah.
would be in the chat, and I would super chat every so often. And then when the pandemic hit, around in this household, both of us were working in industries that it didn't slow down. So instead of people who couldn't go to work, we found ourselves at home working 10, 12-hour days. And for me, in the beginning of the pandemic, I was working 7 days a week for a long period of time, many months. And I just needed to have an outlet. So I was watching comic stuff. I was watching, Gary, Friday Night Tights when that started. Gary, when he and Doomcock were doing the Exozone, was one of my favorite shows. To just switch on the Exozone and just listen to what was going on with that. I liked the Inquisition for a little while, but I kind of cooled on that, um, just because of the time that it was on, because I had to get up early for Monday. And I started doing some super chats in the comics division streams on Mondays and Thursdays. And it started out with a Nick Weiser thing there. And I was watching Supreme Heretics Thursday shows he was doing on Pegasus Actual. And there was some really funny stuff that came out of that. Some Dick's jokes that we used, and making fun with Drew and things. And then those kind of led, Drew was on with comics, so I kind of followed that over there with some of that humor. And then I started doing these Nick Weiser flavors on the show in super chats, and they kind of took off from there. There's well over 200 of them by now, but we started doing other things, and I started talking to comics, and he had some mods, but he didn't have too many around at the time. Excuse me, sorry about that. And he's like, I need a mod, and I'm like, yeah, well, sure, I'll do it. So he made me a mod on his channel, and from there, we were talking about stuff and things back and forth on Twitter, and what do we need to do here? What's this person doing? All of that. And that led to him getting me into the chats where the link was to get back behind the scenes, like here.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of, I think he had put them there for a while, expecting me to come on board. And I just didn't see it as an invitation to come on. I saw it as, oh, he's including me in this back in the chat so that I know what's going on, and I can talk to them and talk to him about people in the chat and what's going on from there. I just didn't presume that anyone would want to hear me out on the internet. And one day he asked, how come you don't come on? I'm like, I don't know. So he had a member stream, and that was the first thing I was ever on, was Comics Division's first member stream a while back. That led to me being on, doing some things behind the scenes on the shows, and eventually he said he wanted to make some changes and be able to do some more with the channel. He works full time, I work full time, and he offered for me to come on and help produce and line up guests and find places for him to be and help other people who are trying to get on and do exactly what you're doing here, and find people trying to create new culture and create new comics and things and stuff like that. And that's kind of led to where we are today. And the show that we have is on Mondays, yelling at parked cars, and Thursday with TNT. And of course, I show up in Gary's chat on F&T with some weird names. I try and come up with some weird names there. So,
yeah, how'd you come up with the name Toxic Man Flu? I love that.
Oh yeah. So this was before the pandemic. well
Okay, yeah,
before the
that
pandemic. So it wasn't this. First off, I'll on record. This name was not pandemic related. Um, so and the what you're seeing on screen was done by Jaffo, one of the artists in the chat here. It's a 3D render in Damascus steel of something I asked him to do with the toxic symbol and the man symbol and the flu symbol with some wings. I really like this, and he's done so many of these for me. It's great. But I was in chats with Gary using my real name at the time, and it was getting to the point where we're starting to get spicy because the cancel culture on the internet and stuff really wasn't taking hold. We were just fans on, talking about Game of
right.
Thrones and talking about Star Trek and talking about things we like and we not. And then it started to get really, really bad. And I was like, okay, I need to come up with a name and an identity that I can at least not have my real name sitting out there. And I was like, what could come up? And it needs to have three there. And it just hit me out of the blue. I'm going to use toxic man flu. And it
Yeah,
just,
well,
okay. Because the toxic male, I was thinking about toxic male, right? From there,
yeah,
and thinking about, oh, what if it was some kind of disease that you could catch? And then that kind of just, it all snapped to place. And then about
yeah,
3 months or so after I started using it, the pandemic hit. And I'm like, well, I'm stuck with it. So here we go.
yeah. It was kind of a little fortuitous. So, well, usually I don't like to go over my own background on my show, but I know that you're a guest, and we do have some new viewers here. So just kind of quickly, I mean, so I've actually been podcasting in general since I was about 14. And I was one of those really weird kids who was like, I was really good at like history and politics like from an early age.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so um, you know, I listened to I actually like started listening to Rush when I was like, I don't know, 12 or 13, and kind of thought, well, maybe I could do this one day. And then podcasting became a thing. So I started doing like a kind of like a political show. You know, and then kind of like a young conservative thing, kind of around the time Andrew Breitbart was a thing. And then like later on, once I was in
Right.
like high school, I started getting into like more pop cultural things because I've always been into comics and whatnot, and I got into Dennis Miller. He's one of my favorite
I've seen
comedians.
Dennis Miller live a few times. I really enjoy his stuff.
Yeah, and he also had his radio show on. So I used to call into there, and he actually gave me, once I was like, I never talked to him like regularly, but I talked to him enough to where he kind of knew who I was after a while, and he gave me advice once that you ought to do some more of this like pop culture stuff and whatnot. You're kind of good at that, so kind of rebranded my show in 2014 and have kind of doing like a cross of politics and pop culture. And I can't remember how I got into this whole space. Is I found the Critical Drinker during the pandemic, and I I got addicted to Critical Drinkers videos, and then I found Gary's video, and kind of the rest is history. I kind of fell into this rabbit hole, and now I'm here, I guess. So,
Yeah, it amazes
so
me how many people I find have been on here for years.
yeah,
And it's not something that I ever wanted or set out to do. And it's not some, I don't see this as being a career. I don't see it as being that I'm going to make any kind of money at this or anything like that. It's to me a hobby, and I've met some really great people through it. Um, I I'm looking forward to the Vegas meetup coming up. We're going to go out there and meet some people face to face and be able to sit down and just talk to people. Um, the internet can be such a good thing and it can be such a bad thing. So it's
Yeah.
good that you can have people across the world that share a love for something come together and talk about it. And you can have those people have disagreements and you can talk about it and have a spirited discussion. Um, it's also bad in that it can be used for evil, as we've seen.
Oh yeah.
The things that are going on with I'm interested to see just what percentage of the Twitter accounts are bots, and I'd see what
Yeah.
Elon Musk comes up with.
Yeah, I guess that actually that just broke before while I was prepping for the show. So I am curious to kind of know what your opinion on that is. And also, I mean, do I detect a Texas accent there too? Or
Yeah,
am I just
around
hearing
that
it?
area. I grew up in Oklahoma, um, and was on radio for a long time down in that area, and then moved out to New York and in the East Coast for a while, and then now I'm in the Chicago area from that standpoint. So I've
Okay.
moved around a lot, but
Oh, so
born and raised
you're
in Oklahoma.
so you're in Chicago then. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry you live in such a left wing hellhole, but I know I do love Chicago, the city and the people. The people are pretty good as long as you don't bring.
Yeah, it's pretty sad uh, as it's restrictive. It has the toughest gun laws in the country. You actually pay taxes 5 cents a round when you purchase ammunition, things and stuff like that. So um, it's very restrictive. They
Gun.
they don't admit the trouble that they have. The mayor of Chicago, I don't think is doing a good job at all. I mean, if you can't admit that you're wrong, you're not going to do a good job. So,
Yeah,
but that's the city area. You go outside of the city, it's a different thing. The southern part of Illinois, the middle part of Illinois, there's a lot of farmland. There's a lot of different, more of that middle America type out in that area. And it really is just the city. You get a lot of
yeah,
that in the ads and stuff. You see people, downstate against the city, and but I think you're going to see people moving out of cities. Well, we already are. Illinois is losing quite a bit of people. I think it's well over 400,000 at this point in the last year or so that have moved out of Illinois, and that's a net loss in population, which is never good for a society um, or an area. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. You've got to keep having more people pay into it as it goes along. Same thing with the welfare system and those kind of things. You have to have more and more people pay into them. So any area that loses people, loses population, is going to have trouble paying for things. And
yeah.
Chicago was in that way until Biden won, and I think the state got a bailout of a certain amount and stuff that was there. So, uh, but yeah, it was. Uh, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff around here. There's a lot of great people. I've met Nick Weiser here. Was able to meet him face to face. Me and Mrs. Flew went and had a great time. There's a lot of other people up in this area that are in their chats frequently. That um, over time, I think Nick is planning to have a meetup in this area in April of next year.
Cool.
So we're really hoping to have that and get to meet some of the people around this area. Maybe Tom from Midnight's Edge, if we can get him together. I think that would be great
I
from there.
actually had Yeah, I actually had Nick Weiser on this show about maybe a little more than a month ago, and he's actually one
Nice.
of the reasons why I'm talking to you, because he said that have he said that comics division is great, but if you get Toxic Man Flu on, he's an interesting guy to talk to as well.
Well, that's good. I'm
So
glad Nick had good things to
um,
say.
So yeah,
mm,
you know, I know that Nick Weiser is you know, he's a pizza addict, and you know
mhm. He's a
that's
yeah.
that's
He
fine.
his pizza aficionado. I would say that from there. If there was ever an expert in pizza, it's Nick. And
Yeah.
just don't tell him that deep dish pizza is Chicago pizza. He will go nuts from there because it's not. But he's lived in Chicago his whole life and knows this area very well.
I
And yeah, go ahead.
I I like deep dish pizza. I'm well I'm from I'm from Colorado, but I live in Florida now, so like we don't
Hmm.
really,
Hmm.
you know, we don't really have you know, pizza or anything of our own or anything like that. But I mean, Florida's got,
Right.
you know, Florida is Florida. It's
Hmm.
weird, and you know there are Florida men everywhere. But we've also got pretty, you know, our name. I guess our common fan is we're Florida. That's pretty much it.
Right.
So
You are what you are, and you're not ashamed of it.
yeah,
That's the attitude I think that I like. There's a song by Monster Truck that Kid Rock recently covered. It's called "Ain't Nobody Gonna Tell Me How to Live," and that's the kind of way that I was raised. I'm sure that Mrs. Flew can tell you I'm very stubborn, and do not tell me what I am supposed to be doing because I won't do it. Whatever you want from there.
you
My
you ha-
ancestors.
you have
Go ahead.
oh go ahead. No, I was gonna say you've even said that you're stubborn in your own Gilded server.
That's right.
So
I am. Um, my my grandmother on my mom's side, her mom uh, was part of the group of American Indians um, that came over to what they call the Trail of Tears. So in the 1840s, they discovered Georgia. In Georgia, gold, and the five American tribes that they called civilized because they had their own written language. That all the tribes were civilized. It's kind of stupid, but the Cherokee, Choctaw Creek, Seminole, Osage, all those, and they won the Supreme Court case to say that you can't take us off the land just because you have gold. But Andrew Jackson, okay, I don't care, and blew right through that court case and force marched them across to
yeah,
the then territory of Oklahoma. And we know about the thousands that died, the smallpox ridden blankets that they gave them, the things that they said and did, and people that they killed. That's a well documented thing. So they came over, and um, through that, my grandmother, my great grandmother, um, they weren't gonna. They just didn't want to be on any government list. So when it came time for my grandmother to register on the rolls, she didn't, and didn't say how much American Indian blood we had in her, native blood we had, because and up until the day she had her stroke, um, she'd tell me I'm not going to be on any government list, and whenever anybody on a government list ends up dead, and that's how
yep,
I was raised, was in that, and both sides of the family. So the other side of the family had some American Indian in it, but they were also German that came down through the land rush in the 1880s from there, and they were all very independent and had moved away from the society, the cities and stuff, to be on their own, to be left alone, and to live their life. So that's something that's, uh, I guess, it's in the blood from that standpoint. And I really, you can suggest all you want, you can educate all you want, but as soon as you say you can't do that, I have a problem with that. Now, there's society
yeah,
laws. I agree in it's my choice to live where I live. And until we move out, that's where we are. But we agree that murder's wrong, and assault's wrong and all those kind of things, robbery's wrong. We agree about that. So those are the things you shouldn't be doing. But outside of that, I shouldn't be able to tell you, Sam, what religion you're going to practice, if any at all. It's none of my business for that. It's none of my
Right.
business for what you do, who you decide to marry or go out with, or any of that stuff. That's not my business. I don't want you telling me what to do in that, and I'm not going to tell you. So that's pretty much that golden rule: do unto others as you have them do unto you is pretty much the philosophy. And with that comes some forgiveness. I'm not
Yeah.
always perfect. I know this comes as a surprise to my wife who's in the chat. I am not perfect, dear, and I need forgiveness from that. And I may have, by admitting that, she may have just fainted. I'll have to listen to see if I hear her hitting the floor in the other room.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
If you need to excuse yourself to go pick her up, let me know. We can cut to
yeah, we can go from there.
music or something.
Yeah, babe. I love you.
No, I definitely agree with you. I mean that's kind of my general philosophy on life. I mean, I would say I'm more of like a conservative libertarian hybrid in the sense that like, I definitely have like, I definitely believe in like free speech and the Second Amendment and whatnot. But like as far as like what you do in your personal life, as long as you're not harming anyone else, and as long as you're not like harming kids or just being like overly irresponsible, just live your life. So I mean, the radical left does drive me crazy. It kind of seems like now they're being the fascists, but I've never liked the religious, right, necessarily. To be
I agree with
clear,
that.
I respect, I have a Christian faith, and I respect people who have faith, but I don't really respect those who try to use the religion, as a political tool to moralize to other people. So I like to tell people that, yeah, I mean, I'm conservative, but I piss off both sides equally, I think,
Right.
because because I don't agree with either side 100% of the time, and that's one of the things
Mhm.
that I kind of like about this, this community too, is that like no one's really radical on either side, even though the mainstream media likes to say that, oh, Gare radicalized, so and so,
Right.
or all this other stuff. It's
Mhm.
nonsense. So
Well, it's there's alts to either side. So you got 2% on either side
yeah,
that really cause the majority of the problems. And that's because they are so hell bent on what they believe. They're the ones that are going to get out there and push stuff, while the rest of us are out working and living our lives. So it's kind of like with Twitter. You wake up one day and Twitter is filled with less than 1/10 of 1% of the U.S. population, and less than 1% of them post. So you have a small group of people taking advantage of the fact that the rest of us are just swiping through things, to put up these 128 character sound bites to agitate for their
right,
side, right? And I mean, I look at the people protesting out in front of Justice Kavanaugh's house. That is extremely illegal. That is a huge federal offense. That's a felony. You lose the right to vote and the right to bear arms by doing that. And they had somebody threaten to kill him, a credible threat to kill him, and yet the Justice Department is not going out and arresting those people for breaking that law. And you're like, oh, okay, well, it's their right to protest. You protest in front of a judge's house. You are incentivizing them to be biased as opposed to giving their unbiased judicial opinion on the law, right? And that's why that law is there, so that you have people who can be impartial, that they are protected from
Yeah.
the mob going out and doing that stuff. And that's why the Second Amendment is there as well, is to protect us as the people from our government, because all governments will eventually become tyrannical. That was one thing the founding fathers and mothers, because there were women involved, and I'll tell you that
Sure.
in a second. So, but the reason that they wanted a small government because all governments are tyrannical, and you need them to be small. So having the states have the power, there was a balance of some kind. And I say founding mothers. I've done a lot of research myself in certain areas, and the idea of individual sovereignty, individual freedom, where I, as the individual, was most important, which is what the U.S. Constitution and freedoms are based on, actually came from a group of Quaker women in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I
So,
actually knew.
yeah,
I actually
yeah.
knew that.
So religious women who said we are all individual from God, we all have the same, we are equal across. So they're not only fighting for equal rights for people, they're in individual person, but also for women's rights at the time. And it's just, this is the way things are. And when I learned that, to me, it made perfect sense. One of the most powerful influencers of my life was my grandmother on my dad's side, who was 5'1", raised 5 kids on her own, started a church that we went to for a long time, and would take me to stock car races and would take me to horse race, the horse track. So we watched racing there. She'd take me to hockey games, and here she'd be, this little woman on the corner, yelling at the fight, at them to fight and do all that kind of stuff, and just flipping out. And
Yeah, she's
yeah,
yelling at all the big men to
yeah,
behave.
she's sitting there. She wanted to get in there and get a fight and all that stuff. And it's just, they were, my grandmothers were not that far away from the Depression and the Dust Bowl, which
Sure.
was pretty bad for Oklahoma at the time. That there were people in my family, cousins and stuff, who the dust was flying so much through the wind that it created static electric charge on metal. So they would go out to touch the plows and things and stuff like that and get shocked and would be killed by the dust that was flying through.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, they struggled to survive, actually struggled. So all the struggle session stuff and things that you've seen people talking about now, I call extreme bullshit on that.
Yeah.
I've known about struggle. I've had firsthand accounts from people who opened up concentration camps in Germany and what that depravity was and what they did to people.
Yeah.
And stuff from there. And
Yeah.
I've had grandparents that have lived through actual depression, actual suffering, and this stuff that we're seeing now. We truly live in the best time ever, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
We
I think we can't underpin enough.
we really do. Not to say that we don't have struggles out of our own, but whenever people say this is the worst, time in history ever, and people on both sides do it, I just kind of, roll my eyes and say, yeah, shit does kind of suck. It's not the worst it's ever been either. That's an over exaggeration. So
Right. Well, I think as an attack on the United States, I've said a few times, and that I truly believe that the system of government created in the 1770s and 80s for the United States is the only self form of government that's ever been created. I think that looking at what's happened in Australia, what happened in Canada, that's not self rule. It quickly became a dictatorship there in those areas, and the government had authoritarian rule. Here, we'd given up enough that it was quick. I think if you realize that the quote unquote mask mandate and the vaccine mandate from the Biden White House were actually not anything he signed, they were press releases. The president does not hold that kind of power. In fact, the states don't hold that kind of power. Here in Illinois, the governor only had 30 days to be able to enforce that. And he could go back, she could go back to the legislature and ask for another 30 days. And after that, that was it. That was in the Constitution of the state. After those 60 days, it went to the cities and the municipalities. So the city that I live in has voted itself unfettered emergency power every week since March, April, May of 2020. So they've suspended all of the ordinances and things and stuff like that. So in that sense, it worked. There's still a tyrant or tyrants running the life that I have here, but they're local people and I know where they live. Right? I can go to those meetings and I can voice, you need to stop giving yourself emergency powers. This is over. You need to be done. You need to go back to where we were. You don't need to, you have to go back to following these ordinances. You need to stop this. And that truly puts it in the hands of the people. Because if 1,000 people, 2,000 people in my city decide to go to the city council meeting and tell them, stop voting yourself these powers, or we're not going to vote you in next year, then that's the message they should be getting from there. There's no need to be violent. There's no need to be angry. You go and you voice with a group of people, and that changes things.
It definitely does. I've noticed though too that, like, unfortunately that type of thing does not get press coverage though anymore. And outrage sells basically. If it's the old adage of if it leads it bleeds. So if the like, for example, if the January 6th protests hadn't had bad actors in them, if it had just been a peaceful protest like it was for the most part, it probably wouldn't have gotten any press or as much press. I'm thinking, because responsible people just gathering and protesting, well, that's not exciting and that's not sensational, so it's not it's not going to sell.
Yeah, it's I think it's always been that way. I think that the institution of journalism as a profession has fallen apart.
It totally has.
Yeah. When I was growing up, the local television station, there were 3 of them: NBC, ABC, CBS. They were in different, of course, one was number 1, one was number 2, and one was number 3, the whole Ron Burgundy thing. And they did different things for different people. So whichever station was number 1 was the majority of how the people in the city were thinking. But they would do things like talk about the events that were going around in the city. They would talk about the sporting events. They would talk about the art events that were going on. They would talk about the Performing Arts Center and the musicals and the plays and the bands that were coming to town. They would talk about that. And they, of course, would talk about if there was an event that happened, somebody got shot or murdered. But they would do things like talking about kids who were up for adoption and kids that were waiting, there for parents to come and adopt them. They would do things like that. They would go to the cat shelters. They would have kid shows in the morning and bring local kids on and do fun things and stuff like that.
I actually kind of remember a little bit too when the local news would actually cover local issues that mattered. Whereas like now it seems like the local news has more or less, unless it's like a publicly funded station, they more or less have become kind of the same thing as the national news, where they want to talk like national issues and whatnot, and now that it's Gay Pride Month, they want to talk about like pride issues, even though no one, in town, no one in your local proverbial town really has any, gay or, lesbian activists, and even if they have gay, people, they don't really care. A lot of this, like stuff is mainly a lot of this pop culture stuff is just run by activists, and it's
Right.
annoying.
And that's, I mean, they're zealots. So a zealot is not someone who is reasonable. They cannot be talked to. They cannot be reasoned with. So the zealots come from both sides, and it's not something that it, I just end up not talking with them. There are people out there who feel differently. They have a different sexual orientation than I have, and I'm okay with that. That goes back to this same thing. What they do in their bedroom is their business. What I do in mine is my business. I don't want to know what goes on in theirs, and I don't want them to know what goes on in mine. There's a whole none of your business. And asking some of these questions, the response used to be, "That's none of your business." People would ask your vax status. That is none of your business. And they're like, "Well, your breathing could kill me." Okay, well, the numbers beg to differ, but no. So that, they try and turn that argument over, and it's just, okay, well, in that case, you're a horrible driver. I think you should have your license taken away.
Right.
Where does that end? And some people don't realize that the laws that Hitler used to justify what he did were actually the eugenics laws passed in the United States in the 1920s and early 1930s.
Yep.
Where they said they could put people away for whatever they want. And if you had many women that were put into asylums just because they weren't married, and things and stuff like that. So when the government starts having more power over people's lives, that's when the problems arise. I need to be responsible for my life and the things that happen. Whatever I do, I need to suffer. I will deal with whatever those consequences are, whether I suffer through them or whether I benefit from them. But they're my decisions, my choice. I'm grown up, my life from there, and we've kind of forgotten that.
Yeah. Sure. To me though, it's not. To me though, I mean, the tyrannical governments are certainly a threat. There's no denying that. But to me, there's also, as you and I talked earlier, there's now also this, other kind of that has crept up in the, in the past few years of, cancel culture and kind of this whole, idea of mob,
Right.
Rule, so to speak. And, that if you don't use the correct, pronouns, or whatnot, or if you don't like what I like, then I'm gonna get you fired from your job, motherfucker, and you're gonna suffer, and just that whole,
there's definitely a well, it's being a zealot, and you have religious zealot.
Yeah.
Normally, those two words go together, but also authoritarian zealots out there who believe they know better than you for how things are, or the whole climate change thing. I believe the climate change are destroying the world. It used to be in the 70s we were going to have another ice age. In the 80s we were going to have the greenhouse effect and we were going to burn up, and then nobody believed it because it kept saying that the oceans were going to rise or the oceans were going to recede, and it never happened. And they finally settled on a term that we can't argue: climate change.
Yeah.
Of course, the climate is changing. About 50,000 years ago, we would all be under 100 feet of ice through the ice ages. So if the climate hadn't changed, and we are now in a very long period of warmth on the planet, but if it hadn't have done that, we would not be here. We would not be dealing with this right now. If you have the chance to go to New York City and go to Central Park, you will see these giant rocks, and you'll see these grooves in them.
Yep.
And that's the pebbles that were uh, raked across them as the glaciers receded.
Yeah.
So if you really want to tell me that climate change, we need to go back to where we were, then that movie Day After Tomorrow needs to come true, where the glaciers run all the way down to southern Texas, right, and freeze that stuff up, and so they are taking something, and I cannot argue. Yes, the climate changes, but you have to turn that into the absurdity of what they're saying. Because that's the slippery slope. If you're going to say this, I'm going to take you all the way back to, okay, we should just be this giant mass of magma, because the climate then, was nothing. And then we got bombarded with water, and suddenly there was an atmosphere. That's climate change.
I certainly think that being a good, steward of the environment and taking care of the environment is important. But when you get people like Al Gore, using the planet as a political, propaganda piece to basically scare people, and use fear porn.
Right.
That's when I have a real, and that's actually kind of when I became, political. People ask, why did I become, political at such a young age? Because I was one of those kids. When I was in junior high, that was when An Inconvenient Truth came out, and my parents actually, I watched it in school, and then my mom, who is based, she actually kind of sat down with me and kind of explained the other side of, what, global warming was, and kind of debunked it. And so, that's the other thing is she was very active in, actually making sure I actually had a full education, not just what was taught in
Right.
school. And I mean, a lot of kids now don't have that. So, and that's why a lot of this social justice stuff is the way it is. So,
well, I was very fortunate in my education. And one of the things I found out later, the Pledge of Allegiance that I would say every day before school, and singing of God Bless America and stuff, was actually propaganda created by the when Dwight Eisenhower was president. And it was created to combat the communist threat, because coming out of World War II, Russia and communism was thought to be the greatest threat to the world. And part of what they wanted to do was to instill great patriotic spirit for this representative republic into its citizens. So having the flag, the rules for handling the flag, displaying outside of your house, doing the Pledge of Allegiance, singing, patriotic songs, stuff like that. That was something that I did in school for a very long time. But where I was fortunate with school is the critical thinking that I was taught. I had a very diverse group of teachers when I got into kindergarten and first grade, second grade, and stuff a long, long time ago in the 70s. I had a science teacher who was Mr. Smith, was an African American man who was phenomenally intelligent and was very good at science and very good at math. And all of the kids in the school had went through that class, and we um, went outside and learned stuff and things like that. And the whole scientific method, my critical thinking, came from that man. And my think scientifically. What does this do? What's the cause and effect, and all that kind of stuff. Um, I had teachers who were homosexuals, and you kind of knew. Nobody said anything. It didn't matter,
Yeah.
right? They were still good people, and people that I knew and talked to and did stuff well on past high school, and it just didn't matter from there. So I count myself very fortunate, even though I come from what people would call a backwoods, screwed up state. Um, I had a very good education at a progressive. I hate to say the term progressive because there's a lot of negative connotation to that. But at the time, the open concept and the teachers that they brought in there were just the best that they had. It was out of merit, and it didn't matter
Yeah.
what religion or creed they were or color of their skin. It mattered about merit, and that was right after the whole 60s, and you had the assassinations that had gone on. You had the Martin Luther King stuff that was happening, and I witnessed firsthand people saying, "Okay, we need to stop being bigots and all this kind of stuff, and we need to start, you know, judging people by merit, really." And I had some great teachers that I have talked to, and they knew me and stuff many decades later, going and seeing them. So from that, I try to be as open as possible, inclusive as possible. It's not always easy. There are times when I get upset. People have Trump derangement syndrome. Anytime I see Nancy Pelosi on screen, I want to throw the television through a window because
Yeah. You
she's,
and me.
yeah,
You and me both. Well, that's that's very the whole thing with Trump is I initially um when he initially came onto the scene, I running for president, I was kind of skeptical of Trump because I'm like, when I was growing up, Trump was the guy who hosted The Apprentice, and he was the guy who fought Vince McMahon live on WWE. Like, those were the two things that he was famous for. So I was like, is he really going to run for president, or is he just doing a publicity stunt? And then
right.
what I noticed with Trump was as he got more serious and more people, it was almost like the more people he pissed off, on both sides, the more I liked him, and the more they tried to stop him and
Mhm.
throw, monkey wrenches into his works,
Right.
the more I like him too. The other thing is, I think Hillary Clinton is just an absolute garbage, human
Mhm.
being, even more so than Bill. I think, I think that your local trash man could do a better job as president than,
Well, don't
Hillary
disparage
Clinton.
a great profession such as sanitation. Without that,
Right,
our
right,
world
right,
would be much more
right,
smelly. And yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, Hillary Clinton
Well,
has
no,
not been somebody I've ever thought was. And let's just say that growing up where I was, and her and Bill in Arkansas, we kind of knew that she was getting people who were doing bad things to women off
yeah,
outside of her husband. So I understand we need to have a strong defense when it comes to those kind of things, but at some point, the things that she said about women's rights and stuff just ring hollow, given how she was. And you'll know
yeah.
people by their actions, and her actions are just horrible.
Yeah, the fact that the quote unquote feminists were, saying I'm with her and all this nonsense in 2016. It's like, no, you third and fourth wave feminists, you're not even for women's rights or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're just a, so anyway, getting back to Trump though, it was more like, especially when it came down between him and Hillary, it was like once that was the thing, I was, like, well, I'm full MAGA now, and
Mm-hmm.
it became a joy for me just to troll people almost with my MAGA hat, just to see people melt down, especially since I'm in a wheelchair too. That's the
Right.
other thing is I have a disability, as a lot of people know, and so kind of the whole thing with labels of, well, you're in a wheelchair, you're disabled, you can't be a Republican, and I kind of have the whole thing. I kind of have the same thing you do, where I don't like being labeled. I don't like people trying to say what I can or cannot be. So
Right.
if you try and tell me, I'm not going to get mad at you so much as I'm just going to troll the shit out of you, because that's
Right.
what
Well,
I
people
do.
show their ignorance, right, with that kind of stuff. And I liked Donald Trump because he won, and he was out there being who he was. And were all of his positions things that I agreed with? No, I think he was a Democrat who ran as a Republican populist, and uh, he reflected a love for America and an America First policy that I think we needed to get back to. I wish that he
Yeah.
had not gotten rid of Steve Bannon. I think once he got into office, he started listening to people around him that from that swamp, and he cut loose to Steve Bannon, who got him the victory. Steve Bannon was the one that went into those specific areas, said, "We target these things, we can go after this, and we can beat Hillary." And that's exactly what they did. I mean, what was it,
Yep.
100,000 votes or whatever that separated that because of those key areas. And if Michael Flynn had not been done dirty by the U.S. government uh, as he was, and Steve Bannon hadn't been cut off, I think we really would have seen them cut into the swamp at that point. And I'm was not happy with, outside of Gorsuch, was not happy with the Kavanaugh or the Comey Barrett picks. I don't think that they were constitutional enough. I think there were other people out there that could have been better. So, um,
Really,
yeah.
really,
But
you didn't like Kavanaugh? I'm curious about that.
no, I didn't like Kavanaugh at all. And there's someone that I watch, Robert Barnes. He's on with Viva Fry on Sundays.
I Yeah, I like him a lot.
Mhm. And when they were nominated, he was talking about they are big business Republicans. They're not civil libertarians. So you say, okay, civil libertarian, I can't be a civil libertarian if I'm a conservative. No, no, no. You have to be a civil libertarian. Civil liberties. My liberty as a citizen. That's what that talks about. And it's a civil libertarian. And what the ACLU used to be was government's coming after me, people, corporations are coming after me. I'm, as the individual, am supposed to have power. And that's what civil liberties is. The government, these corporations can't roll me over just because they have more money. I can go to court and I should and be able to, with the law, a rudimentary understanding of the law, be able to defend myself and get my civil liberties out there. Um,
Yeah,
and from that standpoint, I just don't think that Kavanaugh is a staunch enough civil libertarian. And Comey Barrett and her decisions, which I researched enough before her nominations. Same way, she sided too much on the side of big business as opposed to the individual rights of citizens, and that's kind of where I fall.
Wasn't Comey
that
Barrett she was a fresh face too? She'd only been a judge for a short time. Before,
I'm
is
not
that right?
sure. She had been a judge, I think, for a little while. She had some major decisions, but she always sided on the side of business. And the big one was the decision that she had holding up the Jacobson decision, which was one of those laws I talked about early from the 1920s, 1930s, the eugenics laws, to where the state owns your body, you don't. She upheld that decision in a ruling that she had. And that to me was an automatic strike.
In regards to what? I'm not really familiar with.
So the Jacobson decision was about an individual's right to refuse treatment, and the state being able to force them to have a procedure done. So the Jacobson ruling is that the state has power for safety. So in the name of public safety, I can do this to you. And for me, as a civil libertarian, an individualist, no, you don't. I can say, Sam, these are the reasons I think that you should get this vaccination. I could say that till I'm blue in the face. Here's the facts. And if you read those facts and understand them and say, no, I'm not going to do it, that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Right? And some of the things that Comey Barrett had, well, not some of them, there are a couple of rulings she came out with that were the opposite of that. They were, Sam, I'm sorry you don't understand this, but for the good of everyone, we're going to force you to do this. And that's what, so I was automatically against her coming in. I hope that her decisions are better. I, for one, am not, the whole thing with the Roe v. Wade to me is a distraction against what's really problematic out there in laws. I think the Supreme Court has before it 30 things it has to get done by the end of this month, and one of those is a decision of the New York case that would affirm 2A rights as shall not be infringed, and it will strike down all of the New York laws that they have that put blocks to gun ownership.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
Firearm ownership. Yeah, and they know, based on the law, they should strike it down. Roberts doesn't want to pick that stuff up because Roberts is a coward. Roberts knew that they had all that stuff, and he should have brought that up, and he should not have certified the election, all that stuff, but he was afraid of riots.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and something I've been thinking about, it's a bit of the, I guess, extremist in me, but I was thinking, especially in regards to Comey Barrett and maybe even Kavanaugh or one or the other. Recently, there were like somebody was arrested and they claimed like their goal was to like assassinate. I think it was Kavanaugh actually. They like
Kavanaugh,
they were arrested
outside his house. Yeah.
Right. It just got me thinking, like, when's the last time any of these multimillionaire lifetime politicians have, paid physically, that someone has like actually done harm to any of these people? Like it used to be, at least in my lifetime, presidents attempted assassinations. They at least got shot. There was
Reagan.
We the people type shit. It's obviously I don't condone violence in any way really, but I mean it's just one of those things where like, well, no wonder they're just the boots crushing ever so progressively down on our fucking necks because they've got free reign to do so. I mean, not only do they write all the laws, they print the money. That they're generations into this little scheme here. So
yeah.
I think the last time was the Republican softball game. And Steve Scalise and several others were shot.
That's right.
It nearly took the life of Steve Scalise.
And that wasn't even that long ago.
It was 4 years ago or so.
Yeah,
I think more like 3. I think more like 3 years.
It was definitely before the COVID. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's.
I mean, I guess the reason I bring it up is like, especially the talk of gun ownership and shit. It's like a lot of these politicians, they've got they've got guns. They're just paid for and
Mhm.
carried by other men and women. You
Right.
know,
Mhm.
if they're, I mean, I don't know. I just imagine a world in which you see all these school shootings and just, I mean, I live close enough to Chicago. That's like local news for me. So every fucking weekend, or every Monday or Sunday, it's like 55 people shot, 14 dead in Chicago. It's, those are
Yeah.
just people. But if people were pointing that anger towards, or that aggression or whatever towards, you know, the people with the boot on their neck,
Hmm.
it just, I don't know, where it's all misplaced, and it's very well designed, actually,
Yeah.
if you think about it.
No, no, it is. One thing I wanted to ask you too, Toxic. I know we've kind of been bouncing all over the place in terms of
Hmm.
topic, but I know you guys on your channels, you cover lots of entertainment stuff, and I try to get you guys, with like yelling up hard cars as much as I can, but I kind of missed this week's shows. I'm kind of curious if anyone in your circles has talked about Matthew McConaughey going to the White House and basically talking out, we need to take your AR-15s away
Right.
because again, this is another case of someone in Hollywood, one of the few people I actually like, being disappointing and kind of towing
Right.
the same Hollywood
Well, I can understand why
line.
he did it. He's from
Me
there,
too.
right? That's where he lives. He's a resident, um, and it is very sad what happened. I still don't know
Sure.
the full truth. I don't know whether the police went in and then came back out, or I've heard reports that one of the fathers, after 30 minutes, went and grabbed a shotgun from somewhere and
Yeah,
came in and went in and did that. I've heard that
got a
they,
bullet through his hat, I believe.
yeah, I heard that a mother wanted to get in and they tased her. I've heard all kinds of stuff. What I do know is we're not getting the full story.
No.
And obviously, something looks bad for that police department, or they're having a hard time piecing it all together for real and trying to figure out what's going on. But
Yeah, I don't buy the latter. I really don't.
The the thing that's frustrating for me in Apex, I know, we've talked about this in the past, but it seems like I was almost hesitant to even bring up the shooting in Texas, and people on Twitter have asked, why haven't you talked about the shooting in Texas? And it's not I don't care, because I do care. It's tragic. I just feel like every time one of these incidences happen, whether it's this or Parkland or Vegas even, we always come back to the same conversation of politicians always want to restrict gun rights, right? But we never want to look at the people or the situations themselves, or
Sure. Or the fact that
you
the
know,
FBI knows about these people like 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10
right,
fucking times.
yeah, there were signs
or
with this kid. I'm very much against red flag laws of any kind.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, right. Because that leads us down the line of the Minority Report and things such as that.
Sure.
And
yeah,
until a crime is committed, nobody has committed a crime.
Right.
And even then,
right.
until they have been convicted of said crime, they are not guilty. Um, and
Which is why it helps. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. Go ahead.
no,
Go ahead.
no, it's just that it's not easy. Freedom does not come easy. It does not mean that your life is going to be easy. Freedom is hard. These
Hell yeah.
things happen. We did talk about, and getting back what you'd asked, we did talk about mass shootings, and I brought up stats. Since 2018, there have been what they consider a mass shooting is involving a firearm when four or more people are injured or killed
Right.
in any combination. Right. Um, the two largest ones were Uvalde, and I'm sorry if I butcher the name, and El Paso, Texas, that had 22 and 23 deaths each. The next closest was 13. And the number of deaths in those shootings um, that were above 10 was 9 out of 2,000 events,
Damn.
plus events. So this is not an everyday occurrence. It's actually a rare occurrence in statistically, but it is and going back to what you had said, Sam, earlier, it is a headline grabbing event.
Mm-hmm.
And we went
Yeah.
from the local news, and I used to have 30 minutes of national news. And now we've got 24 hours a day
Yep.
of national
Yep.
and world news. What you have to realize, there's not that much going on.
Of course.
So they make a lot of this stuff happen. And you
Uh-huh.
end up, it's TMZ 24/7 news. I'm encouraged by CNN, their new chief coming out and saying, we're not going to do the sensationalism. We're going to do the real news. And if our personalities can't get on board with that, then they'll have to find somewhere else to be. I mean, money talks.
That is encouraging. I guess I don't know. With CNN, I'll take a wait. I'll take a wait and see approach. I think part of that though too is CNN has been in the toilet for so long. Their streaming service basically like flopped before it even launched. So
Wasn't
I'm glad.
wasn't it CNN reporters back in Desert Storm? They got busted doing the fake like air raid or something like that famous
Yeah,
like wearing helmets and shit, and the outtakes
Right.
of them in a studio. Yeah, that was
yeah, yeah,
ages ago,
yeah,
decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Norm Macdonald even was like in a parody on SNL for that
Yeah, right.
back
So
in the
yeah,
day or
I mean
something.
they've been a clown show. It's been again that was what 30 years ago. you know,
Yeah,
and they've been doing the same shit ever since. They've just gotten better at it. They still get caught, but it's like a virus. They just continue to evolve. But I wanted to go back a little bit because I didn't want to interrupt you. Toxic man flu. Is there something like toxic? Is that a good shorthand for you?
Whatever you want to call me.
Cool.
I
Man. I'll call you
I
man.
will
No, I'm just kidding.
I will answer to asshole
I
as
don't-
well. I do
You're
that.
the second. You're the second person in I think as many weeks to suggest that. So that's not going to work.
Okay, good.
But yeah, you're right. Like the minority report and shit and the red flag laws. Like I'm very much against that. Um, because a crime is not committed until it's committed, and even then, it's not committed until it's proven. Which is why it's so helpful to help your potential criminals not only plan but supply them with hardware or information or whatever it may be, motivation, all of which can be very easily documented and then presented very neatly packaged to the media, whichever as it were. You know what I'm saying? Which is why I think why conspiracy theories around mass shootings and mass tragedies is such a thing, because they're fucking lying about all of them. But it's impossible to
yeah,
tell where the lies end.
Right.
Like, because the thing that really, I mean, I grew up with a conspiracy theorist stepdad, like late into my teenage and early into my adult life. And he was into all kinds of crazy shit. He loved Alex Jones, but it was the age, and it was so frequent that most of it was like, I don't care, man. I wanted to get high and get pussy. I didn't really give a fuck about whatever he was talking about. But the Boston bombing, I'll never forget that, because that was like the thing, the whatever you want to call it. Someone might call it the red pill moment, I guess, where I'm like, well, hold the fucking phone up. We're running the show, buddy. Sammy's out.
Uh-oh,
Uh,
Sam.
okay. Well,
and the show's back.
And
yeah,
Sam, hey, he's back.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's fine. We get it. We know, Sammy. If they've watched, you goddamn boomer ass do this at least once a show.
Hey,
Um,
I'm just like Nerdrotic. I have my boomer moments. So
That's right.
also, it is raining here, so I don't know if like a power line got taken.
yeah. I don't think so, buddy. But I don't. Yeah, It doesn't really matter. I was just, ruminating or, remembering, with our guest here, Mr. Asshole Flu or whatever.
There you go.
That, the Boston bombing and the inconsistencies with that, and then the subsequent literal martial law that was employed. And admittedly, I watched a good portion of it through Alex Jones and InfoWars, mainly because it's had a lot of the breaking information. But again, the seed was already planted with my stepdad and stuff. But that was. I'm not sure the point of why I even fucking brought that up. But
well, I mean, it's when you've been lied to,
right, there you go.
then it's hard to believe anything that the national media is telling you. I find it very difficult to watch national news. I find it very difficult to watch anything that President Biden says. It makes it hard to counteract what they say because I'm not watching it. But it's that entire government to me. I'm just waiting for it to end.
Yeah.
We're going to have to clean up whatever the damage that they're doing at this point. I mean, can I sit there and go in and think that China has done a great job of putting in Manchurian candidates, not only in the House, but in the Senate and on both sides of the aisle, and they're selling us up the river for profit? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to refute how rich Nancy Pelosi's gotten, how rich Mike McCarthy's getting, how rich Schumer's gotten, how rich what's this Dick Durbin and all these people, how rich they've gotten by being in government for far too long. And Nancy Pelosi has been in office for 40 years. Why? Because she's gerrymandered her group to where only her rich friends that benefit from her being in office are voting for her. Yeah. They discourage people from voting. So it's easy to sit there and say, here's these people, they're should not be in there, that they're all getting paid by China or a Russian oligarch, or Ukraine was paying them. I mean, how many of, was it Romney's kid and Pelosi's kid and a couple of other prominent top politicians, their children were all working for groups and big business in Ukraine as consultants. So, Hunter Biden as well. That's not conspiracy theory. That's fact. So they are elitists, and that is a class war. That's what's going on. And very much what happened to French Revolution, all that stuff. There will be a Marie Antoinette that says, let them eat cake one too many times, and then there will be some kind of retaliation for that. You're starting to see that the Texas school boards recently had elections, and 72% of them went the other way from being, democratically held to Republican held because you messed with people's kids. One of the good things about the pandemic is people saw what their kids were being taught, and they're like, no, I don't like that. There's only so far you can push from there. The Supreme Court, not Supreme Court, the Senate and stuff. So we had these, the House passed these laws, these draconian laws about gun control and stuff. And none of this has worked. If gun control has worked, you're lying if you think that it's worked in any way. It hasn't. And the laws that are on the books aren't getting enforced, right? This kid, they knew about him. It was all there. Had every opportunity not to do it. These police, according to what I've heard so far, though I haven't seen the full truth report yet, had every opportunity to take him out. Didn't. But they last minute that through the House. People got the word out. And the senators that were thinking about doing this all got deluged with phone calls. And a few of the Democrats who were going to do it too. And they backed off. And there's not even going to be a vote as of right now. on this,
Good.
so it's going to die in the Senate, right? Um, so for people who say your voice doesn't matter, yes, it does. Yes, it
That's
does.
a very good point. I'm sitting here thinking crazy talk about, attempted assassinations or assassinations on politicians when motherfuckers can't even write a letter or call their local politicians and speak their mind or go to meet, like town meetings and shit. That's why they don't feel pressure.
Right.
Again, pulling back a little bit on my own fucking argument, the violence would just make the shit worse. You gotta
Yeah.
just call them.
Yeah,
Just get everybody in your fucking neighborhood to call your senator or whatever.
Well, the violence
Well,
is never going to. You have to have a discussion.
Of
So,
course, yeah. I was being I was trying to be a little edgy, of course. I was
no,
just
yeah,
joking mostly.
and I know where you're going with that, but it is not easy to have freedom, and as I think it was Ben Franklin said, those who give up safety for freedom, give up their freedom for safety, get neither.
Yeah, deserve
So
neither.
deserve neither, right? And
I
go ahead, Sam.
oh, I was gonna say what's interesting about that is I actually posted that to my personal Facebook page just a few days ago. That exact quote, and it's very interesting because the people who are just so anti-gun. I didn't even say anything about the Texas, the Uvalde shooting or anything like that.
Right.
And they all I did was I posted that quote, and I immediately got comments like, "Oh, well, you don't care about the safety of kids or something." They just immediately drew that, you know, they
Right.
just immediately drew that parallel when I didn't even say anything out,
Well, and that goes
guns
back
or
to the zealot
so.
argument. They're just
Yeah,
all they know is that this thing bad. They don't want to know the actual statistics.
sure.
What is none of these have happened outside of gun-free zones. Okay,
Yeah,
so what if you're going to look at the stats? Just realize that gun-free zones don't work. All they do is tell people, they're either going to walk right past them and not care, and it just means that the law-abiding citizen is going to follow the law and be unprotected.
yeah.
Right?
I would take it.
Yeah.
I would take it one step further. I would say it's an invitation.
Of course it
It's
is.
like it's come on in. There are sheep for the slaughter. But anytime you try and bring up the argument again, oh well, you're just a bigot. So
Right.
There are so many, countless, I would argue, video evidence that are pro, that could be used pro gun control, or not gun control. I'm sorry, pro gun ownership and training and understanding of how they work and why they're necessary. But they don't kill more than like one person, or if they do, if they they kill one person and then they get fucking shot. I've seen so many videos of somebody trying to rob a place, pull a fucking gun out, and the dude next to him blows their fucking brains out. Or
yeah,
trying to, some dude walks up on a crowd and pulls a gun out and tries to rob them, and a woman pulls a pistol out and two taps him. You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole group of kids there, and this obviously deranged man who could have done all kinds of harm is now, neutralized.
Right.
Like, and we're not talking about all these dead kids on the news. Instead, you're not talking about it at all because it doesn't fit the narrative. You know.
Well, I
and
mean, it's definitely
exactly.
tragic what's happened to those kids and their parents, and everybody has to go through that. And you're not going to get away from tragedy. It's just not
Right.
going to happen. We're not going to be able to save everybody. People will die. The eventuality of you taking your first breath is that there will be a last one. And when you have people that have not had any adversity in their life, any real adversity. I mean, I've never been really hungry for very long in my life.
Sure. Sure.
I can go down to the store and
Right.
get anything I want, even with the shortages that we're having. I'm not going hungry, right? Um, and there are people in this world who do not have clean water, right? So the people that are coming out and saying all women's rights, things like that, go live in Saudi Arabia for a while, go live in
Yep.
Afghanistan for a while. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, if you want to talk about people that are oppressed, go to the parts of Africa where they still circumcise young girls, and talk about that. I mean, put your money where your mouth is, or shut up. Basically, from that standpoint, and like we had Andy Masterson on Thursday night, and he just got done doing a race. He's a physical trainer. He trains people and stuff. That they raise money for water projects in countries where they don't have good treated and clean water,
Sure.
and we take that for granted here
Absolutely.
in the U.S. because 120 years ago that wasn't the case everywhere that you could find that kind of clean water, and just having good plumbing and having clean water, that's going to do the most to elongate your life, is having those kind of sanitary type conditions.
Sure.
Hot water, I mean, hot water for showering. How many of us can sit there and take a 20-minute hot shower now, and that kind of stuff, and you're not going to get that in certain areas, even some places in Europe and things like that. They don't have, it's not how they've lived,
Sure.
because of the abundance that we have. So um, tragedy, you're not going to be able to get rid of it. I don't begrudge Matthew McConaughey for using his celebrity to try and focus on a problem.
Sure.
There is so many things that happened until we know what the truth is. I don't know what the solutions to those truths, to those things might be.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
begrudge I don't begrudge him for speaking on it because because he is from that area. And out of all the celebrities, I do think he is more level-headed than most.
Hmm.
Also,
But
for me personally, 'cause I loved season 1 of True
yeah,
Detective.
Hmm.
oh yeah, me too. That's what I was going to bring that too. I mean, I also have the bias of yeah, I do like him as an actor too. But I mean, I guess the only criticism that I would have maybe of him is towards the end of his speech, it kind of seemed like he sounded a gut. It kind of seemed like he called for gun control a little bit, and
Oh, he did.
but
He did.
yeah,
He called for, there are still people out there that believe the AR in AR-15 stands for assault rifle when it stands for
So
automatic.
right,
many. So
Right.
fucking many.
And that's the problem. I can have an opinion on anything. I can only have an informed opinion on the things I know about. And
yeah. Well,
Apex, you said something. If you're going to exercise your Second Amendment right, you should be trained on how to use it. Right? You shouldn't just
yeah,
get it and just, you should know how. You should know how to clean it. You should know how to store it. You should know how to do those things safely. You should know, right? I had a cousin, a distant cousin, that was shot and killed in a road rage incident.
Oof.
And that jackass should not have pulled over
Ah.
to
Yeah.
yell at somebody, right?
Right.
And okay, guy thought, oh, okay, he's yelling at me, all that stuff from there. Why did you pull over? Why? And I say that because avoidance. You can avoid most of those situations. Where the tragedy comes in with this is those kids could not. The teacher
right,
could
Sure.
not,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you had this door that was left and you say left open. Well, what does that mean? We've all seen those kind of doors. Sometimes they don't close and lock properly. Sometimes if you slam those doors, they don't lock at all and they prop back open. Um, is that the teacher's fault, or is that just what we call a tragedy? It's tragic. It's unfortunate. It's me not walking, I have not been in that person's shoes. I'm not going to criticize what happened. Um, it's a police officer in the middle of doing something with all these things going on, um, or somebody at war with all these things going on, the fog of war and those kind of things. I can't, unless I've been in that situation and I have knowledge of that, I really can't pass judgment on them for what they did from that standpoint. So can I have an opinion? Yes. I'd rather have an informed opinion before I do what one of the sayings I love from my father. He says, it's better to keep your mouth shut and let people think you're an idiot than to open your mouth and erase all doubt.
Right.
From that, so that's kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know much about the details of Uvalde other than like some of the stuff you hit on earlier. About apparently a teacher went in, or a parent went in with a shotgun, and a mother's got tased, and I saw footage of the cops, putting a concerted effort into keeping hysterical parents back. But I mean, to protect and serve, who?
Well, that's
I guess
not
is
actually
the question.
True.
Yeah. Well, of course
the
not.
Supreme Court ruled that the police do not have an obligation to go and risk their lives for you.
Sure.
So if the Supreme Court has ruled that, then the Supreme Court should rule that my right to defend myself, which is what the Second Amendment's about, should not be infringed from that standpoint. So
obviously, yeah, because if the police aren't going to put themselves in harm's way for you, who is? You. It's left to you.
They're not going to be there. And these kind of things and the time that I would use a concealed carry, that's a very remote chance for me, just statistically. But one thing that's my father again had told me is it's a 1 in a million chance that a cow in Vermont gets struck by lightning, but it's 100% for that cow that gets struck by lightning.
Sure.
Right. And that's, you get these things, you train, and you put the safety together. You take the safety courses. You go and you get training from someone else who's an expert.
Sure. Yeah.
It is
all very important things. Yeah.
Right. It's a responsibility, and a lot of things we talked about here, it's about responsibility. If you're practicing personal responsibility for these things, you will do this.
Let's be honest. It is a little. Well, I don't even know how little or lot it is, but it's much like driving a car. Because
it is.
You can do a great deal of damage with that thing that you're operating, and if you're taught properly, and even though, look, there's plenty of cases of perfectly fine drivers their whole lives that use that as a weapon at some point, maybe not even a deadly weapon, but I mean, it's ultimately responsibility. That's what it boils down to, and understanding what it means to operate that particular piece of machinery and what it can be used for, what you shouldn't use it for, what it should be used for, etc. I mean, obviously they're very different things, but it's in the responsibility realm, they're not that different.
Well, I mean, there was a guy in a vehicle that ran through a parade, killed a bunch of people up in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't even think he's been charged. I don't know. It's out of the news cycle completely.
And I remember I got fucking botted hard. That's the first time I think ever since I've had my Twitter account that I posted. I just straight up tweeted on my timeline something like, this Waukesha tragedy is not going to be reported on by the mainstream news. And I got hit by like 10 or 12 accounts that are not followed by anybody that follows me that all said, different versions of the same thing. Idiot, they're all, are you not watching the news right now? Like, that's not my point. They're not, of course they're reporting on it now. People are dying. It's sensational. They can get some clicks, but it will fucking die. I wasn't replying to all those people, but it was, it's true that they're not going to talk about it. It does not fit the narrative. People dying, that fits the narrative, and they'll spin the rest of the details however is favorable, and then it falls out of the news cycle, and only us nut jobs that are paying attention ever talk about it.
I brought up the point too, and I probably should have posted this on Twitter, but I brought up the point to someone IRL today that these same people who say that only the cops should have guns and whatnot are also the same people who 3 months from now or whenever the next big Black Lives Matter thing is, the same people who say that only cops should have guns are the same people who will say defund the police.
Nah, I think they're past. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Fundamentally, what it is the people 2 years ago that were screaming about defund the police are now saying only cops should have guns. That's the reality.
Right, and it's like,
just move the timeline back a little bit.
Wait, but yeah, it's like, but wait, didn't you only want cops to have guns? But wait, didn't you say just a few months ago to defund the police? So which one is it? And then just to watch them stammer on all of that is pretty hilarious because.
Well, it gets back to, this isn't about Democrat and Republican. This is a class warfare thing.
It's also neurosis. It's some new form of neurosis that I don't think. If it's understood by military science, and not not publicly disseminated. But it's mental illness on a different, because we've never had. It's something a regular topic on this show, and it's part of our world now. But the whole social media and internet thing is an entirely new dynamic to the human experience, and it's evolved very quickly, and seemingly, it's weaponized. It's been weaponized for since almost its inception.
Right.
Yeah.
Arguably, that's the whole reason it came out, because the military had it for a decade and did some experiments, probably, who knows, and realized, oh shit, yeah. They figured out during MK Ultra that people could be programmed through trauma, and that if you could spread the news instantly from person to person across the fucking planet and create everlasting trauma with that 24-hour news cycle, they could be programmed to do whatever the fuck we want. And it's
right.
Proofs in the pudding.
Well, as the Smashing Pumpkins say, despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in a cage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing around that. Even if you were to move out to the middle of the country, right? You still have to have some way of making some kind of income to pay the taxes on it, because everything around, all land is taxed. And then there's a lot of work around growing your own food. That stuff's not easy. Being self-sustainable is definitely not easy. So
it's also not that hard. If you remove the taxes part, if you didn't have to make money, or whatever. Who was it? It's Kaczynski, right? There's several cases. The Dozer dude, he had his little fucking property out. He did his own thing, and the government bent all of their fucking rules and lobbied every bit of power they had to buy the dude's land up. So he spent what time he had left welding a goddamn tank around his bulldozer and destroyed a bunch of shit. I don't even think he killed anybody though, did he? Other than himself?
I don't think so.
Off the top of my head, I'm fairly certain he just caused millions of dollars worth of damage.
Yeah, well, Well, and then there were those ranchers that like went up against the Obama administration's
Yeah,
ATF
they had a
back at
they had a famous name. They had a like serial killer name though, didn't they? Bundy or something. It's like
yeah,
Sounds familiar.
it was like
it was
they
something
weren't
like Bundy.
related to Ted Bundy.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I think it was the but they weren't related to the Ted Bundy, but it was like the it was like the
I
Bundy
don't know if
Ranch,
that's
and
I don't
yeah,
know if it's Bundy, but it's just what sounded right in my brain.
I no, I
I'd
think it
have to look that
might
up.
be or something. But
Anyway,
yeah, I mean,
yeah, no, there's lots of cases of that Ruby Ridge.
Right.
We all know the big ones. Excuse me, sorry.
um, yeah, I mean, it just it just seems like the same people who want safety are
Oh,
the
it
same
is
people.
Bundy, Clive and Bundy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Clive and Bundy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
What a fucking name, dude. Clive
Wow.
and Bundy. Cool.
Yeah. That sounds like that sounds like an outlaw's name or something. If I if I ever heard of one.
All right. I'll be right back, chat. Sorry, guys. I'll be right back.
But no, I mean, like you said, this entire show, that the government, anyone who wants to control you should be, you know, it, you know, really suspicious, and
Mhm.
you should be aware of them, and so I'm glad that people are pushing back against the these politicians who are trying to use yet another mass shooting to propagate gun control, because that's what's happening. I don't think the politicians actually care about these kids. I think they just want to control, and use the
Right.
kids
They're
to push.
using, no good tragedy should go
Yep.
unused. Um, and it's, to me, one of the worst things that you can do is intentionally manipulate somebody else to do something against their will. I think that that's evil.
Yep.
Um, so advertising to me is evil. You're intentionally trying to get somebody to buy something they may not. Right. So and that's the subliminal advertising, the other stuff. They're using things like that. Um, and the way that they manipulate words, the journalists or so-called journalists of today, manipulating words, manipulating images, the fake stuff that was coming out of Ukraine, the fake stuff that was coming out of January 6th, all that stuff was coming out. It serves, even if those things were true or not, the events and what happened, all of the lying around it serves to do nothing but um, destroy anyone's confidence in what they're hearing about that
Yeah.
from there. And you need, in order to make an informed decision, you need the truth of what happened. I do not want my gun rights curtailed because of what happened in Texas. I, however, do want a full investigation of what happened. And
Yeah.
since I do not know police procedure, I want that independently done. And they review what they did. And if they followed their protocols as they were supposed to be, there's no reason to blame any of the officers. Right. If they didn't, okay, that's a different story. But if they followed that, then you look, is the policy and procedure correct? Right. That's
Yeah.
that next step to go from there. And unfortunately, you have to be reactionary to these things. The proactive nature is the family unit, and not overloading our teachers with too many kids. I mean, we're spending more on education than we ever have, and yet our education system is worst shape it's been in a long time.
Yeah.
It has to be because most of that money is going to administration and other things.
Yeah.
It's not going to actually teaching the children. And some of the books and stuff that have shown up in these curriculums, I think we can see where this stuff is going. It's going to fund, some of this crap. But
Yeah,
that's the natural critical thinking part of it. Don't I'm trying to hold my words, because am I upset at the possibility that the police did not go into that and save those kids? Me as a human being, I want to think that if I were in that situation, I would go in there to save those kids, right? No matter what, no matter what was called, no matter what the training or any of that stuff. I've never been in that situation. I don't know. There's a song by the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. I've never had to knock on wood, but if I had, would I be able to make the call? Would I be able to do this?
yeah,
Right? Would I desert my post when the shells were flying, or would I be the hero and go up and sacrifice my life? I don't know. I've never been faced with those kind of hard choices. Those people were. Am I upset? Does it just make my blood boil to think that they wouldn't? Yeah. And I was. But I've got to back off and let the investigation happen. If the investigation doesn't happen and they sweep this stuff under the rug, I think we can all know why they did.
yeah. Interesting. Apex, you were gonna say something?
Nope. I'm gonna bite my tongue.
Alrighty. Well, we are coming up on 2 hours actually, and man, I know you said you were fading, a
Yeah, I've
bit
been
in
up a lot
chat.
today.
So yeah, well, I mean, I really appreciate you coming on, especially because I know this show does start at 10, which is kind of light on a Saturday, but even so, I still
Yeah.
appreciate it. So
I'm sorry. I'm actually sorry that I was late.
Oh, that's
my
all right.
stupid real job. But I heard a little bit of the conversation earlier, and great guest. We'd love to have you back. I would dare to say.
Sure.
yeah,
And if,
well,
Sam and I will work it out. And I think
yeah,
comics is coming on sometime next month, right?
yeah, comics is coming. Comics division is coming on in July. I don't know when yet. So he and I and you are all trying to figure that out. So, but that, and like I said, you're welcome to come on with him.
Sure.
I know that he's a gun expert. I know that he's a gun expert. So I would be really
Yeah.
curious to talk out, some of this stuff with him as a gun expert, because when I was on the cocktail lounge last night, we talked a little bit about it, but like I'm
Mhm.
pro Second Amendment, but I don't know much about guns beyond like what a Glock is and whatnot.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
um, so yeah, but anything you want to plug or anything before we go?
Well,
Or
I'm on Twitter as Great TMF, so check me out there. I'll usually rant and rave out on that one, and you can find me with Comics Division until he decides to fire me on Mondays and Thursdays for yelling at parked cars, and Thursday night throwdown. We start around 9 o'clock Central Time on Mondays and 9:30 on Thursdays. Every other Sunday at 9 o'clock, we do a member stream for those that are members of Comics Division's Subscribe Star. And that is live, though we do that on YouTube. Anyone can come in and participate in the chat and see that from there. I do have my own channel. I don't do a whole lot there. Usually, what I do is the bumpers and stuff that I'm creating for the show, I'll drop out there. Mrs. Flew and I might do some things a little later on, but with Apex, as he said, I've got real life stuff going on, and real job stuff going on, and you got to do those things from there. So,
yeah,
That's right.
yeah. I try to get on the Culture Sunday night late night show that he does. I think it starts around 10 p.m. on Sundays, and I also will do when I can the Saturday Dump with Sporking News podcast. I was on that today, and they usually talk some good stuff around entertainment and things from there. Scott's a really good guy. So that's where you can find me throughout the week. And thank you for having me on, Sam. It was a good time. It's good to meet you, and good to meet you, Apex.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well, buddy. Have a great night, and thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, and thanks to everyone in chat for tuning in and living up the conversation. I saw something about socks and like a crusty sock being the Leviton.
Oh no.
Not sure what that's about, but I'll go back later and read the chat archive because that's always entertaining. But anyway, thanks.
Love you, chat.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and chat always wins, and we'll talk to you on the next podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thanks for listening to The Whitfield Report on the NGC Network. Please visit Sam's website at www.thesamwhitfield.com and support Sam on Patreon at patreon.com/Whitfield Report. Until next time, God bless, God save this great nation, and God, freedom, legacy, in that order.
I could do that better.